Are you like me and sometimes forget that Mazda even exists? Well, that's going to be hard to avoid today because we are checking out this Mazda CX5 and we are going to decide if it's a buy or if it's a bust. That's right, we got a 2013 Mazda CX5 behind us, a forgotten car, not even considered by most people. But we're going to check it out. This has 264,000 miles on it. We are going to go all around it. We are going to check out the wear and tear, the good, the bad, the ugly, everything to do with this Mazda. As we begin our walk around right here, there is not too much for me to talk about really on the outside. We're still going to do our full loop, but there is not too much to bring up. The paint shines really nicely. It's from the north, and there is no rust issues to speak of. Not a big problem on these. The wear and tear is really almost non-existent. I am really impressed with how the outside of this guy has held up. The wheels are nice. No like obvious pitting or anything like that. Now, one thing we can talk about is styling. Now, I think Mazda made some of the ugliest cars possible in the generations prior to these. They had a few that were okay, but some of them were pretty hideous, especially their SUVs, and they were pretty pitiful. We might do a review on one of them someday, but I think this is kind of where where it started to switch, and Mazda started to really make some good-looking cars and SUVs. Now, this one I don't like this one quite as much as I do the next generation as far as style, but I still think this is definitely in the right direction. Let me know what you think down below. Under the hood here, we have the 2-liter Sky Active. Yes, Sky Active. 4-cylinder engine that makes 155 horsepower. Now, before I get to how slow 155 horsepower is, let me just say it's another one of those engines, kind of like the Honda Earth Dreams, where they clearly just used Google Translate to come up with their engine name. So stupid. I wish I could just let it go, but I just can't. Now, even though I can't let that name go, I can say that this thing is running so smooth. I honestly can't believe it with 264,000 miles on it. It starts easy, it is quiet, it does not use any oil or burn any oil. It's honestly just downright impressive how smooth this thing runs. Now, while it does run very smooth, and I will not take that lightly, these engines are not perfect. They do have a few common problems, and that really revolves around oil leaks, either from the front main seal or the oil pan. They do tend to leak oil. Not an expensive fix necessarily, or terrible, but depending on where it's from. But it is something you want to keep in mind, and you got to keep that oil topped off before you do have a big problem. Now, this is mated to a 6-speed automatic transmission. They had a few different options. They had the 6-speed auto or a 6-speed manual in these, which would be pretty cool. This is the auto. The auto does have a few issues. I wouldn't say that it's terribly unreliable, but it does have a tendency to have more problems than the engine, and that includes kind of just hard shifts and then slipping. Hard shifts don't concern me as much as the potential for it to slip. This one's working pretty good. It's really had nothing other than normal maintenance, but it is something you want to keep up with, and if you get one, you probably want to keep up with the maintenance on that transmission. Beyond the engine and transmission, there's really one other big thing that I want to mention. That's fuel pump issues. You might have to replace the fuel pump. That's not something that scares me either, but it is something you want to note, that it could leave you sit or something like that, but it's not a huge deal. But fuel pump problems are common on these. Now, last thing to mention, this is a 2-wheel drive model. They obviously have an all-wheel drive as well. Those systems are pretty reliable in and of themselves, but I don't have one here in front of me to talk about. But I wouldn't be scared away from getting one with all-wheel drive. This one just happens to be the 2-wheel drive. Moving on into the interior, I gotta say I am really impressed with the overall wear and tear inside and the fit and finish of the Mazda interior. Dash, no cracks, nothing like that, no real wear to speak of. The only wear that I really noticed was just on this driver's seat. Now, obviously the carpet, and you can see that the sill is all scratched up and things, so it's not perfect. It has 264,000 miles on it, of course, But the fact of like true wear and tear is just this seat is truly incredible to me. Everything else on the inside just shows really well, and honestly a good detail on this car would make it almost look like new. Sitting inside here, I gotta say, it is really comfortable. This interior reminds me so much of like a BMW X3, and I think that's a good thing. Everything is nice to the touch. The materials feel nice. I really am impressed. Not saying it's my favorite interior ever, but for kind of a base SUV type of a thing, it's a really nice place to hang out and comfortable. We'll see when we get to the back seat if that still holds up back there. But up front here, I got no issues. It is small, but not in a negative way. There is a few common issues in here that you gotta be aware of, and that is sunroof leaks. Just like it seems like any car that has a sunroof, but sunroof leaks are common. The other one is also pretty common across any manufacturer at this point, but they may be a little more common on these, is infotainment issues. Now this is a 2013. Infotainment wasn't even a word yet. At least I don't think it was. So yeah, it's a pretty antiquated system at this point for your radio and your infotainment experience. It's not quite like what we have today, obviously. But the biggest issue really is not that it's outdated, that it's sometimes will crash and be basically useless. So that's common, and it's unfortunate. But as these systems get older, I think things like that are going to be more common across everybody. Sitting in the back here, and I'm giving you my first impressions. I've never sat in the back here, and my immediate thoughts is it does feel small. This seat is pretty close to where I would normally drive. I could maybe scoot it up just a little bit, and I don't have a ton of leg room. And the seat itself feels kind of small. It doesn't like extend out under your legs or anything like that. That being said, it's not terribly uncomfortable. It just maybe feels a little bit smaller than I thought it would, but this is a small SUV. So, I don't hate it, but I would consider it to be pretty much average. One thing I did notice as I'm sitting back here, it's basic. It's fine. I could sit here for a road trip. They did cheap out on some of the materials, like the tops of the door panels are not soft to the touch where they are up front. Not a big deal, but I noticed it. I will say in the trunk, it's actually pretty decent space for a road trip or anything like that. It seems like they sacrificed a little bit of the rear seat room to make some extra space in the back. We are now taking off for the road test. And this is where I'm not sure if the Mazda is going to be good or bad, honestly. I'm hoping a lot of these little, small SUVs are kind of rugged in the driving experience. But Mazda has that whole zoom thing, but I don't think it's going to live up to that, being that it's only 155 horsepower. So I'm actually on a curvy road right here, and it does feel pretty nice as far as on the corners. It feels like a small SUV, or more car-like really than anything. I'm kind of impressed with the handling so far. The power is noticeable, the lack thereof. You really have to put your foot down. If you don't hit it at the right gear, like, you got to put your foot down for it to go anywhere. It seems like merging and things like that would not be the easiest in this, but that's no surprise with 155 horsepower. We'll get on it a little bit here. It's not as bad as it could be. It was a little quicker than I thought, but you have to mat that pedal to the floor for anything to happen. You really got to let it rev out. Now, one thing to note before I bash on the power too much is Mazda did realize that these cars were underpowered, and the next year they put a 2.5 liter in that had a little bit more power. The good part about the sort of wimpy little engine that we got in here is that the fuel mileage is great. 32 on the highway, 26 in the city. You can average that out to somewhere around 28, 29, which is incredible for a little SUV. Like, it might be worth the trade-off for that fuel mileage to me. And I have to say that the transmission is shifting very, very well. You would never know that it has this many miles on it. Even though that those hard shifts can be common on some of them, this one is operating flawlessly. Yeah, I actually kind of like the way the transmission shifts, other than those ones where you kind of want to, get on it and it's in the wrong gear. It takes a second for it. But The overall driving experience is really nice. I do hear some squeaks and rattles inside the interior when we go over bumps. Not uncommon, but it is sort of noticeable. However, I will say it is much more refined of an experience than like the Honda CR-V that I just reviewed recently. This is a much quieter ride inside and more refined than some of the other small SUVs, at least. One thing I didn't mention is this does not have any warning lights on. The check engine light does come on for emissions every once in a while, and then goes off. But it could be the gas cap loose, something like that. But as of right now, as we're driving it, there is no check engine, nothing like that on. Seems to be running healthy, and really, there's no issues that I can think of. The AC is cold. All the windows go up and down. All of that stuff that's important for your day-to-day life is solid. Now, I would love to someday get one of these in the manual. I've not driven one, but I would love to see the difference that makes in the driving experience. They do get a little bit better fuel mileage as well, so that's a plus. And you would eliminate a lot of your transmission issues with the hard shift and things, or at least the potential for that with the manual. And probably feels a little bit quicker too. Back from the road test here, and we got to decide if this thing's a buy or if it's a bust now. These run about $5,000. I would consider that to be kind of an average of SUVs of this age. Now, you might be able with 265,000 miles to find one cheaper, but if you're looking at that 150 to 200, you know, that's where your price is going to be depending on where you are in the country and how nice the car is. Now, I got to say, for Mazda being one of the most under the radar, just forgotten about automakers, at least by myself. Maybe you all think about them and they're your top pick, but most I don't hear anybody talk about them. So for me, I gotta say I am very impressed with this car. You know, the power, not impressive at all. Overall driving experience is really good, other than you just really have to get on it like we talked about there to pull out of anywhere. But I think I'd get used to that on a day-to-day. And then there's always the option of the next year has that 2.5 liter that has a little bit more power. The fuel mileage is great. The overall day-to-day living with the thing is pretty nice. So today we are going to declare this a buy. I am really surprised. I like this better than some of the more mainstream cars out there. I think the interior fit and finish, all that stuff is a little bit better. It has its downsides too, but I really am impressed with this car overall. If you have one of these, I want to hear what problems you've had with it, if it's been a reliable car for you, and if you agree, disagree, put those comments down below. I want to hear about them. Thanks so much for watching.
Yeah. Please tell me that I can't, that I won't, that I fail, that I'll never make it out, yeah. Please tell me all the bad, never good, fill my head full of every single doubt, yeah. Please say any negative thoughts, I pop off when I hear people say I cannot. I get off to the thought of proving everyone wrong, I won't stop to the top, so